outside. So we've got a few people here, and what ages have we got people here then? It should be between sort of 5 and 10 years old. So that's great. So I will just start running through. My role, I work for the Co-op Group. So the Co-op Group, I think some of you might know, are an organisation which people call the Co-op, with that cloverleaf co-op shape that you've got in front of you. And we sell food, and we sell a number of other things as well. But most importantly for today, we are a co-op, and we're really excited about being that, and excited to be with you as part of Co-op Fortnight to talk about co-op and cooperation. Now, I know that Woodcraft Folk are a co-op themselves and really keen on that, so it's super to be with you and share. If you want to, I want you to get the most out of this. So if you want to interrupt me, if you want to question me, please do. And that's the way we want to make this work. So I would love your questions. So we will start off with what's a co-op, and we've got a little video to play on the next slide.
Hopefully our technology is going to be working for us. Let me know if you can't hear the video.
Yeah, I can hear it.
We can't hear the video.
I can't hear the video.
Let me see if I am sharing the correct. Here we go. I will begin it again. Apologies about that. Can you hear that?
It's smarter to travel in groups.
Move on. The video's a little bit glitchy, so just go to the next slide. Excellent. So the video was a bit glitchy. I think some of you might know a little bit about what a co-op is. That video was trying to show you maybe how it is to work in a group. So what do you guys know about what a co-op is? Can anyone tell me? Or anyone got any ideas?
Well, co-op is short for like cooperation, where you help each other.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's co-op for foods, because the co-op helps people have food and makes the food travel and help it to get to people's homes.
That's probably better than I can do. Thank you. Has anyone else got anything to say about what a co-op is? No. So I think what those videos are trying to show, and what you've said so well, is that a co-op is actually a group of people, a group of members, and an organisation which is owned and belongs to its members. So what it's set up for is to make sure it meets the needs of its members and the needs of the communities that it works in. So as the Woodcraft Folk is meeting the needs of the members, that's you, and it's also working to make sure that you're trying to make a better world. And I've seen some of that fantastic work. I live in Leeds, and just behind me there's a woodlands which the Gledhow groups meet in, and it's absolutely fantastic to see what they do. But like the Woodcraft Folk and like the Co-op Group who I work for, you're right, we sell food. the food we sell is just an expression of who we are as our members. So we sell food to hopefully make better food supply in the world, but also to be able to make what some people would call a profit, some people would call a share, to be able to share with our members and with communities. The only reason we sell any food is to try and make a better world from it. So co-ops are built around a whole set of shared values and shared principles. And that's what makes me excited about working for a co-op like Co-op Group. So you can see here, this slide is talking about the world, and within the world, there are 1.2 billion members of co-ops around the world. They create loads of jobs, and there are 3 million different kinds of co-ops. So the kind of co-op I work in is a really big co-op, actually. We have just over 4.5 million members in the UK, but I equally love my local co-op, Leeds Bread Co-op, which are brilliant. They're a worker co-op who make bread, and they have served through this period where we've had coronavirus to make bread for people that were vulnerable and couldn't get out. And I just think that is as brilliant as what we do as a big co-op, and I've got an awful lot to learn from them. So I think just being part of a big movement, not a business, but a movement of people that are going to change the world for the better, using those values that are written there, like self-responsibility and openness and democracy and equality and equity and social responsibility, is a fantastic opportunity, not only for us as the Woodcraft folk and as the Co-op Group, but also for all the other co-ops around the world. We can help to make this world a better place. So let's have a little look on the next slide and how that looks in the UK. So you can see the UK does an awful lot of stuff. So there are 14 million of those members in the UK and 7,000 co-ops. They do an awful lot of different things. So if we move to the next slide, we'll start to see how some of those co-ops in the UK have done things over the last 12 weeks or so to help make the UK a better place. Let's see if this works.
When the world ground to a halt, we kept key workers moving.
We've kept our stores open and our shelves well stocked.
Hi guys, hope you're all keeping safe.
Today we're going to be making
Frittata,
drop scones, chickpea and pineapple curry.
We've been looking after our family and yours.
Because even when we're apart,
we're helping to build a better future from the rubble of this crisis.
And showing the world what working together can do.
as cooperatives, we know what it means to work together to build a better society.
It's in our DNA, every day.
And it's in yours too. We've all seen what happens when we cooperate. So let's keep cooperating.
So there's a good few co-ops in there. The Edinburgh Bike Co-op, if we just go on to the next slide, who sell bikes. They're hopefully changing the transport systems. It's been great seeing more people use bikes, less car use, less plane use, actually better for the environment. People stopping and chatting to each other. I think that's a good thing as well, through this, which has been absolutely brilliant. I think Lilac Housing, you won't know them probably, but they're a cool housing co-op in Leeds where people live together and have shared spaces to do their washing and shared gardens, so that they are helping each other to kind of socially interact, support each other's families, and actually cut down on the amount of materials that are used in terms of buildings. So their houses are pretty cool. They're made from like hay bales and things like that. So that shows you some of the breadth of co-ops. Although there are 14 million different members in the UK, that's an amazing amount of people. All of them are doing lots of different things, and actually they're responding to the world and the world in their communities. So do any of you know the names of any co-ops? Let's have a think. What's the one we're talking about today that you are members of?
The food co-op.
There's lots of food co-ops. So there's food co-op group.
I'm pretty sure once I saw like a book co-op which had loads of books in.
Yeah, there are some great book co-ops around. That's absolutely right. Food co-ops like the one I work for. There was Mid-Counties in the video, and there's really some great other co-ops like Unicorn Co-op in Manchester that do great vegetarian food. So you're right.
Have you heard of one, Fred and Tom and Joe?
We've heard of one. What's it called, boys? The Woodcraft Folk.
The Woodcraft Folk, yeah, excellent. And Woodcraft Folk have been doing fantastic stuff for a very long time backwards, and will do for a very long time forward. So I'm really excited to be meeting with you. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I won't go through all of these co-ops, but just show you something. And you see the Woodcraft Folk badge is there alongside the badge of Barcelona Football Club, who have Barcelona. I think if you like football, you may know them. They have Lionel Messi play for them, but they are owned and they have 144,000 members, and you can join from 0 right to, I don't know, 120. And you can be a member and help support how they are run. So they're a really massive co-op. Edinburgh Bike Co-ops we saw in the video, and one of my personal favorites is Suma. So Suma were one of my introductions to co-ops, and they are a worker co-op where everyone gets paid the same, and everyone in that co-op is able to speak and have their voice heard about how they should move forward together as a business. And I think that's kind of cool in any workplace. So I think that we at Co-op Group have got an awful lot to learn from Suma. And the great thing about their products as well at this time is loads of people are thinking about what they eat, maybe trying to cut down on like eating meat and things that would produce a lot of carbon, or there are better ways of eating to make the world a better place and to stop climate change. So I think Suma are a really good example that I can learn an awful lot from. And I remember, so when my first job was in a food importer, and we worked to import the first fair trade sugar in the country. And I remember that was where I got introduced to Suma, and I worked on the phones, and I just remember no matter who it was, they were just so nice and kind to me on the phone, and they came across so well. And I think that comes across as part of co-op identity, that they are, that as co-ops and cooperators, we try to respect all people. And I've really felt that from Suma, so I was impressed. Okay, let's move on. So who are the co-op? Or I put the co-op group because that's who I work for. So this bunch of crazy white men, so this was around 1844, so like 176 years ago. Effectively in Rochdale, there was a group of men and a group of families that weren't getting fair access to food. So they weren't able to get food, and when they did, things like the flour, people were putting chalk and things in the flour, which was pretty horrible, and it meant that people got poorly. And actually the families, and at that stage the men in the families got together and thought, how do we make fair access to food? And they came up with this model, this cooperative model, and said, well, if we buy food together, we can like break down the bags of flour, and we'll have enough for our families, and we'll have enough for our community, and we'll start our own shop, which has values and principles behind it, the same as all co-ops today. So they had something that said that everyone get a fair and equal measure. And what that meant is that when you got a bag of sugar and it said on it it was going to weigh 250 grams, that it would weigh 250 grams, that they would get what they paid for, and that there would be good produce. And not only that, but they thought, well, if we have profits from it, or a surplus, we will put that in and we will use it to help people be educated. So they made a classroom above the store, which is absolutely amazing, because not everyone, basically only the richest people had access to education, and only men had access to education. And they said, that's not right, women should have access. Anyone from any financial background should have access to education. And that's what they did. And what I will say is one of my jobs, which is a pretty cool part, is to help look after that original store as a museum of cooperation. And I love that. And actually today, that's a museum that is still a learning room.
We're also, just to say, next Thursday, we've got somebody called Liz who works now at the Rochdale Museum, who's going to be giving us a little tour of that classroom that you're speaking of right now.
Cool. Well, Liz is one of my friends and she speaks way better than I do. And she's got some great stories. I tell you what, okay, listen to this then. Okay, she'll be impressed by this. So the question to ask Liz next week are that those clothes that those men are wearing, they don't look like they fit them properly. So, and what happened is they all put £1 in, which was about 4 months' wages to start this co-op, and actually those men didn't have rich outfits, they didn't have suits, so they had to borrow the clothes for this photo. So you could ask Liz and say, you could say, are those clothes their real clothes? And she will be able to tell you all about that. So yeah, she'd love that. She's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So that original store in Rochdale is where the co-op group came from today. So from 1844, loads of local co-ops grew up. So where I lived, there was a Leeds Cooperative Society. There were several local ones in Manchester. There was one in Enfield. I don't know where you're from, but all these societies built up to the 1950s, and there was about 1,000 co-op food societies in the UK. And then it got really tough, because big private companies, you might know, like Tesco or Sainsbury's or Asda, they all came along and they had loads of scale, and it was really hard for all these small co-ops to survive. So what happened is they grouped together, and they had buying groups, and then eventually these groups became the co-op group, and that's why we're called the co-op group, because effectively we're just a bunch of co-op societies who have come together, and that is how we've come about today, as a bunch of societies, co-op societies that have come together. And the logo on the right hand side is now our logo, and it's a traditional logo that has come about as a clover leaf, to represent that togetherness. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So why are we, the co-op, as relevant, the co-op group, as relevant today as 1844? Well, they were addressing a need of their community. They were addressing hunger and food inequality and injustice. They were addressing the fact that not everyone could have education, and they were identifying those needs and going, actually, together, by pooling our resources and everyone having a voice in how they were used and how the surplus, the profit, was used, was critical to what they did. And it's the same today. Actually, the co-op group, we are owned by our members. It's a different scale. Having 4.6 million members is really hard to hear everyone's voice. But we work at ways to try and do that. And we also look at the things that are causing injustice today. And as a cooperative society, we try and address those things and try and work out what is our role in society to make it better. So I'm going to pull out a couple of examples, and hopefully this is okay for you. So if we go on to the next slide, and I'll talk about some of the things that we do. So within this slide, you'll see in our recent history, we've done lots of things, and I'll talk about fair trade a bit in a minute, but in 1998, we became the first supermarket in the UK to start selling fair trade products in every co-op. And actually, as I said, there are a few, there's not 1,000, but there's around 20 odd food co-ops in the country, and we all buy together to still have that collective buying power, and to be able to share products which we believe come from good sources. And fair trade's grown since then. So we move forward, and in 2003, I'm looking at the blue dots, by the way, all co-op own brand coffee, we managed to change that over to be all fair trade. And then in 2012, we managed to get all of our own brand bananas to be fair trade. And that's a really important message. It's something we want to continue growing. And there's lots of different things we've done. So we've created the first compostable carrier bag, which breaks down entirely. We are reducing plastic. We've still got work to go. But the next big move in 2021, and our target was 2023, was to make the last bit of our own brand packaging recyclable. So you know the film you get on top of packages that you peel away? That's the last thing. We couldn't work out how to make recyclable, but we found a solution. And so we're hoping by the end of next year, that's the last bit of our own brand product. So our own brand product containers will be recyclable, and we're trying to make them easier and easier to recycle. So where there was black plastic, we've moved to clear or got rid of the plastic where we can. And we're encouraging people to try and reuse. There's still loads more we can do. We're not perfect, we know that. But it's all these changes that we're trying to make sure that our supply system in the food we bring and in the products we do are helping the earth and helping our communities. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll tell you a little bit about fair trade as well. So we are the biggest seller of fair trade in the UK. Does anyone know what fair trade is, or shall I explain it? What do you think fair trade might be?
Fair trade is it gives a fair amount of money to the farmers from a different country who normally don't get that much, so they get a bit more.
That's exactly right, Zach. That's brilliant. And I think oh, and I've got a little message from Johan as well. It's where farmers are given a fair pay. And that's brilliant. That is absolutely right. So what we try and do is make sure that we work with the Fair Trade Foundation, who are an organisation who help set out how we work with fair trade to choose the right product that we can get a good supply chain from. And we work with then groups of farmers actually that work in cooperatives and help to make sure that there is a minimum price that they can get for their goods, whether that's cocoa or or bananas or sugar, that they're guaranteed a price. But on top of that, they get what's called the fair trade premium. And this bit for me is really special because that premium is used for transformation in their community. And it's them that get to make the decision on how that money is spent. And that's really important because we want to do what's called empowering people, to give them a voice to make the change in their community. It's not about what we say should happen, but it's about them being able to own their business through cooperation and be able to change their community. So that fair trade premium is what goes to make that change. So they get a good wage for their families and their communities can be built. And that's why it's so important to us as a co-op to support that. So these are some examples. In our tea, we've changed to 100% fair trade. We also got rid of that last bit of plastic a couple of years ago in the seal around tea bags. So that was a really cool moment for me to be able to make sure we do that. Our coffee, likewise, fair trade. Roses are new. We're the largest seller of fair trade wine. I think there may be some people on the call that don't drink that and some people that do, but you know, it's pretty tasty at an age appropriate age. So we'll let your parents work with you and make that decision with you. And then our bananas, as I've said before, are all from fair trade sources. And I think that's brilliant. And 2 pictures I put up. We've chosen 7 categories of fair trade to work with. And that is to do with the Fair Trade Foundation strategy, that actually they want to concentrate on 7 core lines to be able to move fair trade and the message forward. Because if we can do it well, that gives us the opportunity to do it in other areas. So we're trying to make sure that we operate in those well and operate according to how the Fair Trade Foundation want us to, and not do our own thing. I think there were loads of other products a few years ago that people tried, like blueberries and pineapples and lots of things, but because the supply chain was poor, then that built a poor reputation, and we want to grow this and help it to grow in a way that more people will believe in. And even if our competitors in food, maybe Tesco or Sainsbury's, copy it, that's fine with us, because we want to make that change. Okay, so the 2 pictures I put here are really important. The first one on the left-hand side is a meeting of all of our members in the co-op group. And what this is it is our chief exec saying that we will continue to commit to growing fair trade. And I think that's a really, really important message. And for a co-op, he is our chief exec, but actually his bosses are those 4.6 million members. They're my boss as well. So I always look to the members and try and listen to their voice. And then the photo on the right-hand side are my colleagues, but also my friends, Catherine and Sarah, and they are visiting a cocoa community. If we go on to the next slide. And this is why it's important. So I took this from a newspaper today. And this is why it's important to talk about this in this time, and why Co-op supports fair trade. Because if we don't support fair trade and we pull out of supporting it, those farmers will miss out on that fair amount of money, a fair wage, which Zach so cleverly talked about, and Johan did too. And not only that, but if they change the standard, you heard it earlier today, Johan. Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? They're changing the standard. And actually what that means is the premiums that those communities are getting will get smaller, and those communities won't have a choice in how it's spent. And, you know, I'm not trying to just have a go at Nestle here. You know, there are other organizations doing the same thing. And actually it's really important that we hold that, because we think it's right that people get a fair wage, and we think it's right that we're able to try and support their communities. So if you saw that earlier, Johan, you might have seen something said that it costs about 2 pence extra on a chocolate bar to make it fair trade. And we think that cost is worth it. And I'm on what's called an ethics group, and we estimated that cost, and we made sure it was known. So that's why you might have seen that cost, because we thought, actually, if we tell people that, and people realize that it's only 2 pence on the cost of a chocolate bar that is making that much difference to people's lives, they will think it's worth it too. So this is really current. This is today. This is today's world. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Thanks for sharing that, Johan. I really appreciated that. And I talked about, the fair trade premium on the next slide. And this is the thing I think is pretty cool, that I showed you a photo of my friends Sarah and Catherine talked in that newspaper as well, so you can see her in that. And actually this is what the fair trade premium went to, because a lot of the people in the co-op, this is Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, cocoa co-op, and a lot of people in that co-op are females, and they, again, like 1844, weren't getting the education that they deserved. It was a very male-driven society. And actually they identified that if they could create a women's school of leadership, that would put the people at the forefront of the business in charge of driving that forward and help to move that forward to help them to be able to produce more, to benefit their community, and to gain fair access to education. And so when you buy those Co-op fair trade chocolate bars, this is what that money's going towards. And I think that's worth it. And what I really love about this, compared to the first photo I showed you of the Co-op in Rochdale, is, you know, we've moved on from a bunch of old white men like me to helping people from all sorts of different backgrounds and being members of co-ops. So I think that's pretty cool. Yeah. Next slide. So it's not just in food. I think we do a number of other businesses as well. So we also do the funeral business, which is unfortunately really needed at this particular time with coronavirus. So we have to try and do what we can there to support families, and some of that is about making the right choices about the things that they buy. So helping with actually we've got fair trade coffins and ethically sourced wood in those coffins, helping them to find the right arrangements for their families. And one of the big things in this time that's been really sad is that not all members of families or friends have been able to go to funerals. So we've been working to address that and actually helping with things like driving by people's houses or through communities and working with families to deal with the death of their loved ones in a way that they can and would suit them in this time. We do other things as well. I think this sounds really geeky, but we've been awarded the Fair Tax Mark for 4 years running. That's that little logo at the bottom. And I love that. I am really proud that as a company, we are looking to pay our taxes to this country so that we can help to pay for those services that are needed, like the brilliant NHS. And I want to make sure as a company, we continue to pay our fair share and help. And that I'm really proud of. Yeah, so that's great. Okay, let's move on from that. So that tells you a little bit about what we do in our businesses and how we operate, but also I wanted to mention in communities. And actually one of the things that the Co-op has done is design a program of activity we call Member Pioneers, which are at the minute about 800 people that are helping to link our business premises and our colleagues with community activities. And actually their start point is to listen to all those great community voluntary groups and other cooperatives in their community and go, actually, how can we help and support in this current time? And one of the big things we've been asked to do, because we provide food, is help make sure that those people who've had to maybe isolate at home or can't get food can get food. And I really like this. This is a place, Chilton in Manchester, where we've helped to set up a food delivery service by bikes and get the food out to people that are vulnerable or self-isolating. And I just think that as a small convenience store, we don't have all these delivery services, but we've had to think about how to make sure that we can meet those the needs of the most vulnerable people in the community. So that's this story. Yeah, if we go to the next slide. So we've done loads of stuff. So you would have seen that probably some stuff around fair share, that maybe there was a big story last week about that Marcus Rashford, who's a footballer for Man United. I don't know if you know him or not. But anyway, he has helped to raise like 37 million through fair share. And we've helped work with him to give our members opportunity to donate in money, or actually the harder thing in this period with food because of access to food. And we've donated ourselves £1.5 million of food to help meet the gaps that they've had. And last week, Marcus Rashford put out a thing saying, actually, is it fair that over the summer there will be young people, children, not able to access food? And he asked the government to be able to help. And unfortunately, their first response was no, that they wouldn't help. And I think very quickly there was a lot of pressure put on to say, actually, that's not fair. Actually, we need to try and make food available to all people. And Marcus Rashford was brilliant at that. But what I will say on this call and between us is that we helped that. So we've got a director of public affairs who helped to draft his letter. And actually, there's a Co-op party who are a political party, and they helped to write to MPs and councillors and to put pressure on the government and talk to the government about actually making the right decision. And over Monday and Tuesday last week, that pressure mounted. And actually, there was a change. And that change came from cooperation. It came from people working together. We were part of that. Marcus Rashford did a brilliant thing in fronting that. The Co-op party were fantastic at getting other MPs on board. The Co-op group who I work for, we also helped to run a bunch of schools. And we said that if the government aren't going to provide the food, we will. And actually all of that pressure led to change and led to a positive change. So this slide is just showing you some of the activity that we've done over this period with coronavirus to make changes that are really positive, to support our communities, to lead to volunteering opportunities. So we've helped our members link in with the Royal Voluntary Service to be able to support vulnerable customers and people in their homes. You know, and I've been one of those volunteers, and I'm really pleased I have. And I'm part of my local COVID-19 group. You know, whether that's been bringing food to people, whether that's been just stopping for a conversation to help someone that's maybe just a bit lonely, those small, simple things we do. My one act is part of the acts of 14 million cooperators in this country, and together we're making that change. Okay, let's move on. So this is my end, and this is only because my children asked me to put this in. So this is my summary of cooperation, and I apologize for this, but you might like this more than I do, so let's go for it.
A wise old bird once told me, and I believe it's true. He said the world's full of different birds with different points of view. But sometimes there's a job so big, if we want to get it done, we've got to bring those birds together and all work as one. And that's cooperation. Even the proudest of the peacocks knows when to give an inch.
Because no matter what the problem, we'll sure be on a doubt.
If we put our heads together, we're gonna figure it out. And that's cooperation. With just a little cooperation, we can make it through, me and you. It doesn't matter whether we're birds of a different feather,
as long as when the right time comes,
we're ready to work together. That's cooperation. 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 With just a little cooperation, we can make it through, me and you.
And that is the end. So I think that just says that you know, there are lots of different people doing lots of different things, but if we can work together and we can inspire each other through cooperation, I think we can make a real transformation in this world.
Thanks so much, Ed. That's going to be stuck in my head, I think, all evening, and perhaps a new campfire song for us as well. I haven't had that one before, so it's great. Does anybody have any questions for Ed before we finish and thank him another million times for doing this for us? Does anybody have any questions?
Or suggestions about what I should do as well? I'd love it.
I've got a question about the tea bags.
Yeah.
Are co-op tea bags no plastic, so they can go in the old composting then?
Correct. Yeah, the co-op 99 tea bags can go in your compost because they haven't got plastic on the seal.
Make more of a thing about that, because I saw that it was only Clipper tea that you could get, which cost a small fortune.
Yeah. So Clipper tea were the first. Actually, yeah. When I said about my first job in that role, Clipper tea were one of the people we worked with. But yeah, co-op, and that has happened on co-op tea.
Yeah, you should make a big sing and dance about that, because there's lots of people who buy co-op tea.
Excellent.
Oh, and Tom likes that song.
I thought so. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, my son Gideon really liked it. He said that was the best thing I talked about to him.
I really enjoyed the song. Zach, do you have a question?
Yeah. When did you hear about the co-op?
That's a great question. Do you know, that's a brilliant question, because I grew up in London, in North London, and in like the 1980s, 1990s, there wasn't too many co-ops in North London. I didn't really see any, and so I remember going on a family holiday to Whitby, and there was a thing called the co-op, and we used to go and shop there, and I think I got a sausage roll. So that was my first time I heard about it. But then I was really passionate. I think I grew up like always doing volunteering and kind of community stuff. And so when I came to university in Leeds, after that, I wanted to kind of stay in Leeds and work in the community. And through that, I got some jobs, and in helping volunteering community groups get money, get started up, and support them to link together. But one of the things I really learned in that time was that the people who paid for community groups were generally from the local council, or maybe they got money from grants from private organizations. And actually that sometimes meant that they were restricted in what they could say. And so co-ops were a way of being able to earn money and use that money for the good of communities without having any restrictions on your voice for members. So that's when I came across Leeds Co-op, and I thought, you know what, I really, really would like to work for a co-op. So a job came up that was just a 7-month contract, and I thought, I'm going to take it and try. And I'm now here 13 years later. So yeah, that's where it came for me. That's a really good question. Thank you.
Excellent. Before we finish, I know that Ed already asked earlier of what co-ops we might have heard of. As he said, he's open for suggestions as well. So does anybody think that there's a sort of gap in the market of a co-op that they can think of right now that they would like to have? Somebody mentioned a book co-op, but what kind of co-op would you like to think about or think that you could have that isn't maybe there or you haven't heard of? Oh, Johan's got a question, so maybe think about your co-op while Ed can maybe answer.
Yeah.
Johan's question even.
It's from Johan's mum, and the question is the Central England co-op different from the co-op group who I work for? The answer is yes, they are. So when I talked about the 1,000 different co-ops in the UK in the 50s, actually there was a lot of different coming together of co-ops. And Central England are part of that. So they're a regional co-op, and they were coming together of lots of co-ops around Central England. So they are actually different. That's why they look different, and the shops are a different colour. But we do work together. So what's fantastic is they've got a brilliant chief exec, Debbie Robinson, who used to work for Co-op Group. I really wish she still did, but she's doing a great job there. And Elaine, who's the president of the co-op there, is lovely too. And so actually we buy food together. So we buy food together to make sure that we can help support both on the sort of farming producer side, but also to make sure we can try and get a fair price for our customers. So that's how we work together. But we've also done things around kind of our community responses. So when we talked about fair share and other ways of addressing food poverty through coronavirus, actually we set up a group. So I've been meeting every Wednesday with representatives of those different co-ops like Central England to work out how we can make things work best in the areas we operate in. So we do work together both commercially and in our sort of community response.
Thanks, Ed. Has anybody thought of a little co-op idea? I can already think that I would really like just a sweet co-op where people came together with all different sweets from all over the world, and we could have them all together in one place.
That would be awesome. I think one of my favourite co-ops is called the Cheese Board Co-op.
I would like that one as well.
It does what it says on the tin, but I just think that's great. And then on Sunday, we had some friends come in our garden, and one of them was talking about actually waste co-ops in Brazil, and actually they help to sort out the waste and make sure it's recycled well. And I just thought, hey, there's a real opportunity for us to do some of that more locally or nationally. So I think that's something which I just, would love to. A joke shop co-op, that's brilliant.
I like the idea of a joke shop co-op. I was just typing, would anybody have to be on quality control of the jokes, or would everybody just be allowed to put what they wanted in, Tom?
I think in this particular co-op, Tom would have exclusive authority over them. It might not be the most cooperative co-op in that regard.
Excellent. And have you got a joke for us, Tom?
What would you like to sell in your joke shop? Go on. Tom wants to make a sweet that makes people sick, but then has a cure at the other end. So one that makes them feel very sick, and then they suck another little bit, and then it makes them feel better.
No, they're fine.
At least it came with a cure.
Yeah, it comes with a cure. Yeah.
Excellent.
I don't get the cure though, Lauren.
And Johan's written about a home working co-op. Yeah, that's fantastic. I think as particularly like home working grows and freelancing grows, how to support each other is really important in that. So yeah, that's a great idea.
And I was just going to say as well, like you were saying, Ed, about everybody having their voice heard, is that that's what we try to do at Woodcraft Folk as well, when we sort of ask our young people, what do you want to do? Or when we've had game sessions and we said, who's got a game that they want to share? That's kind of a mini version when we're just with our group of what Ed's talking about on a bigger scale. So we are all really good cooperators. I hope we are included or added on to Ed's 14 million cooperators in the UK, because we definitely do that.
You're already there.
Does anybody have any other questions for Ed or anything else to share about their cooperative experiences? And if not, we will say goodbye. And thank you again to Ed. I'm going to stop recording now. But thank